for more repatriation fund. New Zealand to change maritime law. Mental health issues rise on board. Amazing Captain Kate McHugh.
To Manila to send home its crew. Princess Cruises operates Diamond Princess cruise ship along with other 15 modern cruise ships. The company has announced further extension of pause of its cruise vacations from Seattle through June 27, 2021 and sailing the Caribbean, California coast, Mexico, and Mediterranean through June 30, 2021. The officers and crew were transferred to Diamond Princess from the Golden Princess and Crown Princess cruise ships at OPL or Outer Port Limit in Singapore. Magsaysay Maritime Corporation is the local manning agent of Princess Cruises. Cruise shipping is a major employer of the Philippine sea-based workforce. The Department of Foreign Affairs has reported 102,562 sea-based overseas workers were repatriated as of March 9, 2021.
The Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA seeks for an additional funding from Congress to continue its support on the repatriation of overseas Filipino workers. OWA Administrator Hans Leo Kakdak made the appeal at the recent meeting of the House Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs. The concerned government agencies such as OWA provided updates on the situation of OFWs affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Kakdak reported that there were already 470,000 OFWs who were sent home since the pandemic. According to Kakdak, of the 6.2 billion pesos allocated for the entire year of 2021, the agency has spent 3 billion pesos already, with 60% of the cost attributable to hotel facilities. Kakdak explained this is because of the new medical quarantine protocols, implementing a 7 to 9 days stay of the OFWs in the hotel quarantine facilities since the discovery of the COVID-19 UK variant, which was said to be more highly contagious. Kakdak said they foresee that the agency needs a replenishment through a supplemental budget from the Congress by May or June this year.
We have spent of the 6.2 billion allocated for the entire year of 2021, we have spent 3 billion already, with 60% of the costs attributable to hotel facilities. So what I am trying to say is, as we have already also stated in certain press briefings, there will be a need to seek supplemental funding, honorable members of Congress, because of the new medical quarantine protocols. So that around May or June, we are seeking hopefully a replenishment of the supplement through a supplemental budget. And with this, we will humbly recommend, si Secretary Bello had already written Sec Wendell Abisado along these lines last February 24. And we will humbly recommend to the good Secretary of Labor, Sec Bello, to also officially notify the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. So all told, right now we are okay. Just to be clear, we are fine. We are not yet off balance. But we foresee around May or June that we will need supplemental funding because of the new protocols.
The Department for Transport announced that all seafarers, irrespective of nationality, will be exempted from Red List or Acute List in Scotland, country restrictions, most notably mandatory hotel quarantine, that will take effect on March 19, 2021. Seafarers who have been in Red List countries in the 10 days preceding their arrival in the UK will be able to enter the UK to join their ships, take shore leave and/or return home without the need to spend 10 days in managed quarantine or be tested for COVID-19 after their arrival. UK Chamber of Shipping Policy Director Tim Springett said seafarers remain exempted from other restrictions on persons arriving in the UK, including quarantine and testing requirements, and they are delighted to have helped secure this exemption. Meanwhile, the UK government has also announced Portugal, including Madeira, and the Azores and Mauritius will be removed from the Red List and the Scottish Acute List, whilst Ethiopia, Oman, Somalia, and Qatar will be added to it.
2 seafarers have received fixed penalty notices when flying home to the UK for failing to present a negative COVID test to officials on arrival, despite being exempted from the requirement. According to Nautilus International, both seafarers, one of whom returned via Manchester Airport, the other via Gatwick, were carrying their recommended Nautilus exemption letter. They also had all their recommended documentation, including a valid seafarer's identification document or SID, and had completed their passenger locator forms correctly. However, Border Force officials stated that they will receive fixed penalty notices by post for failing to present a negative COVID test. The fine for a first offense under the regulations is 500 lire. In addition, one of the 2 members was forced to pay 210 lire upfront for 2 COVID tests. The officers detained the seafarer for over an hour. This caused further expense, as the seafarer then had to rearrange their transport home. Nautilus strategic organizer Rachel Lynch said these 2 cases highlight the fact that officials on the ground are not always aware of the exemptions that apply to seafarers. The fixed penalty notices contain details of how to appeal and who will issue the fines, yet they can take 28 days to arrive. Both seafarers will be out of the country at this time and will therefore struggle to address the problem with authorities.
Crew Assist Limited has proposed to the Hong Kong government a comprehensive and unique solution for crew change. Crew Assist is a not-for-profit task force organization established by shipping industry players in Hong Kong to help address the crew change crisis. Jonathan Jones, Crew Assist Program Director, said they are already discussing with the Hong Kong government to create a trial of zero-tolerance crew change solution.
We've come up with a solution which we're discussing with the Hong Kong government to create a trial, a guinea pig, to use, create a zero-tolerance solution to look after the seafarer from the moment he leaves his home to the moment he gets on board the vessel in Hong Kong, and likewise when he returns back to Hong Kong and flies home to the Philippines. And we believe that if we can create this as a guinea pig, as a trial, and it works, then we can roll this out through around the world, in fact. So the idea is to use a combination of technology, medicine, and then to make sure that the crew are transported in a crew assist bus, taken to a separate entrance in the airport, so they're not to mingle with the general public, to go through as a VIP through a separate way. Taken to a plane which is designated as a crew assist plane that only carries seafarers. So the seafarer cannot get infected by the general public, And likewise, the seafarer cannot infect the general public. Then when the seafarer arrives in Hong Kong, they will go straight from the aeroplane. They won't go across the bridge into the main terminal. They will be taken to a jetty at the airport where they will board a launch, and they will be taken to a cruise ship to act as hotel accommodation and to give other medical facilities until such time as they need to leave the vessel to go and join their ship for their employment. Likewise, the crew arriving into Hong Kong will be taken to the cruise ship prior to them being taken to the airport to fly back to Manila.
Meanwhile, Liberian International Ship and Corporate Registry Hong Kong Managing Director Jerry Buchanan shared the positive reactions from the stakeholders.
And for them, they said that's a very important corridor, very, very important corridor indeed, because China is still a problem for them. They cannot get crew changes in China. They're having to divert vessels into South Korea. They're having to divert vessels to Manila. And obviously, diversions cost money. So they say that Hong Kong will be a very important corridor if we can get the government to agree.
Crew Assist has been asking the Hong Kong government their requirements to approve the project so that the procedures in Hong Kong can be finalized.
Up next, mental health issues rise on board ship. New Zealand to change maritime law to fund seafarer centers.
The maritime world is changing, and for the better. With help from IMO, exciting and rewarding career opportunities are opening up for women, and a new generation of strong and talented women are responding. They're proving that, in today's world, the maritime industries are for everyone. It's not about your gender, it's about what you can do.
Mental health problems among seafarers are getting worse rather than better, with an industry report citing an increase in ships' master requests for counseling support as Asian crew members top the list of nationalities most affected. Analysis of data generated by Mental Health Support Solutions, or MHSS, over the 3 months to the end of February 2021 showed that anxiety among those on board ship remained a growing issue, without burnout and depression being widely reported in the first month of the study. According to MHSS, burnout and depression require a sustained and long-term approach to treatment, so these problems are likely to rise again as they are triggered by events. December saw an increase in counseling interaction, and out of the 3 months, generated the highest level of critical incidents. Reports related to COVID-19 to do with anxiety, fatigue, and worry about external factors are also on the rise, a correlation that has been confirmed through MHSS interaction with vessel masters. Young cadets are a risk group for many vessels as they have less experience to cope with stressors at sea. Therefore, older, more experienced seafarers must offer this group guidance and support. There is an increase in interactions among Eastern European ratings and officers. Given that this group is typically reluctant to interact, the underlying feeling of discontent is likely to be much higher, especially amongst those who do not interact with MHSS. MHSS encourages increased monitoring of these groups. MHSS Managing Director and clinical psychologist Charles Watkins says they expect to see an increase in anxiety regarding COVID-related travel communications and limited crew changes.
Greek shipping remains number one in the world, according to a recent report of the Union of Greek Ship Owners, or UGS. Although Greece accounts for only 0.16% of the world's population, Greek ship owners own 20.67% of global tonnage and 54.28% of the European Union, or EU-controlled tonnage. Between 2007 and 2019, Greek ship owners more than doubled the carry capacity of their fleet, while they control 32.64% of the world tanker fleet, 15.14% of the world chemical and products tankers, and 16.33% of the global LNG or LPG fleet, 21.7% of the world bulk carriers, and 8.92% of the world container vessels. There were 128 new build orders by Greek ship owners, which amounted to over 1,000 gross tons or 15.928 million deadweight tons out of a global total of 2,425 orders of 166.825 million DWT at the beginning of 2020. Moreover, they have been investing heavily in new, more efficient ships, with the average age of the Greek-owned fleet at 9.17 years being lower than the average age of the world fleet of 9.61 years. UGS also reported only 0.96% of the Greek merchant fleet, based on numbers of ships, and 0.37% of the fleet based on tonnage, which were involved in minor accidents, making the Greek-owned fleet as one of the safest fleet in the world.
The New Zealand government has announced it will fulfill its manifesto pledge and commitment to improve seafarer welfare through funding from the maritime levies. This action was triggered by lobbying from the Seafarers Welfare Board and the Human Rights at Sea March 2020 report on underfunding of seafarer welfare services and poor MLC compliance. The Labor Manifesto 2020 highlighted that Labor will ensure that seafarer welfare centers provide services to the level required by the ILO Maritime Labor Convention 2006 by amending the Maritime Transport Act of 1994 to enable the Maritime Levy to fund the services required for seafarers' well-being. This followed the earlier issuing of an accompanying Labor Workplace Relations Fact Sheet specifically covering the issue. The Regulatory Systems or Transport Amendment Bill will be passed before mid-year. Transport Minister Michael Wood says the Seafarers Welfare Board provides support and services to seafarers who are vital to maintaining New Zealand's global trade lines.
A chief officer and his shipping company were fined and convicted for dumping garbage into the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, following a prosecution by the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA. The marine officer and the Kaidasu Shipping SA were convicted in the Brisbane Magistrates Court for dumping the equivalent of a 120-liter household garbage bin full of food waste into the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Under the Protection of the Sea, Prevention of Pollution from Ships Act of 1983, food waste cannot be discharged within 22 kilometers or 12 nautical miles seaward of the boundary of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. In 2018, Kairos' owned Liberian-flagged bulk carrier Iron Gate was on a voyage between Brisbane and Gladstone when the chief officer approved the discharge of garbage overboard about 24 kilometers or 13 nautical miles southeast of Lady Elliot Island, well within the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park and Australian waters. The ship was detained after detecting the breach during a routine inspection of the authorities. In total, the fines against both parties amounted to about $6,600. AMSA General Manager Alan Schwartz says the convictions goes to their reputations and records that have the longest lasting impact.
The U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, released the results of a study which quantified illegal, unreported, and unregulated, or IUU fishing in the Philippines. According to the report, illegal fishing amounted to 27 to 40% of fish caught in 2019 in the Philippines, which translates to approximately 62 billion pesos, or $1.3 billion annually. At least 30,000 or 30% of municipal vessels remain unregistered, and commercial fishers do not report up to 422,000 metric tons of fish each year. These statistics show the vast impact IUU fishing has on the Philippines' marine ecosystem. The report highlights that while the government has invested significant resources in the campaign against illegal fishing, its operational assets have to be augmented to curb the country's huge economic losses from destructive and unsustainable fishing practices. The report also notes that fishery compliance with fisheries laws and regulations requires a strong, responsive governance structure, and that reducing IUU fishing is a shared responsibility that requires a whole-of-society approach guided by science. DA BFAR Director Eduardo Gongona underlines the country's strong resolve to prevent and put an end to IUU fishing in Philippine waters. He says the Philippines is in the process of developing an IUU fishing index and threat assessment tool which will provide periodic information, encourage voluntary compliance, and strategically guide law enforcement operations.
The Maritime Industry Authority, or Marina, has led the Philippine delegation during the 40th ASEAN Maritime Transport Working Group, or MTWG, and 13th ASEAN-China Maritime Consultation Meeting via video conferencing. Headed by Ms. Priscilla C. Hara, Officer in charge of the Marina's Overseas Shipping Service, or OSS, the Philippines shared its plans, updates, and interventions regarding port and land transport infrastructure development, capacity improvement of the ASEAN network ports, Davao, General Santos, Bitong route, RoRo, operation, policies, and best practices on the improvements of the quality and efficiency of the safety, health, and environmental management in ports, ASEAN Green Ship Strategy, best practices on maintaining efficient port operations, as well as on crew change and seafarers repatriation during pandemic or crisis, ASEAN-China Maritime Transport Studies, and ASEAN-India Maritime Transport Cooperation Agreement. The Philippines expressed its commitment in advancing the development of port infrastructure projects across the archipelago, taking into consideration the importance of the projects in the interzonal movement of people and goods across the country. The Philippine delegation likewise reported that the port authorities have continued to work on the progress and completion of ports projects, including those in the 9 identified ASEAN ports in order to meet local and global trade and tourism demands of the future while ensuring the safety of the maritime workers.
Captain Kate McHugh, the first American woman to captain a cruise ship, continues to amaze us. Her TikTok account now has 1.5 million followers and 28.3 million likes and counting. Among her first uploaded videos amidst the outbreak of the pandemic in April 2020 was her TikTok of the fight song, which earned hordes of reactions. She documents her story on board on TikTok and Instagram with her cat bag naked, which she takes on every sailing. And she's not all image because she is skilled in navigation, GMDSS, maritime safety, STCW, international shipping management, and tested in operations. She holds a degree in business administration with major in marine transportation from the California Maritime Academy. She worked as an officer in other major cruise lines and as intermodal manager of Maersk Line 2 decades back. Celebrity Cruises made history last March 8, 2020 when Celebrity Edge sailed with an all-female bridge and officer team led by Captain Kate McHugh. With 27 women from 17 nationalities, notably Second Officer Nicoline Tifu Azir, the first West African woman to work on the bridge of a cruise ship. Noteworthy also are Senior Dr. Jennifer Bernardo and Financial Controller Teresa de Guzman, both from Tonight on Maritime Viewpoints. Dr. Christian Angelo Didoy Lubaton, Medical Director of Nordic Medical Clinic, will talk about holistic care in maritime. Stay tuned on Marino World Online. I am Lynn Bacani.
And those are the maritime news and views here and abroad. I am Jel Miranda.
See you again next Saturday, 6 p.m. I'm Oling Miranda, and this is